Hey everyone, my name is Brennan. I hope today's been going good, and the strangest thing just happened today. Alright, get this. I was gonna go make a smoothie, right? I went to go grab a banana. Wasn't a banana. It was Hollow Knight. I opened the fridge, went for the apples. You know what? Wasn't an apple there. It was a hat in time. Heck, I even went to go get some milk, but it seemed my cow juice had been swapped out and now resided within the confines of a copy of Wind Waker. I then proceeded to grab a blender and, unbeknownst to me, dropped the 3 games in. Hey, don't look at me like that. Cut me some slack. I was up late having a zoo cube night with the boys. I have no clue what this game is, guys, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that no girls are gonna be talking to us tonight. Then I closed the lid, blended them up, and it resulted in this. How did this come out of a blender? 3 games in 1? Yeah, sure, move over, Mario. I have Cyan Arson to partake in. With Mario's public execution being earlier this year, I now need to find something new to play. I went from stage 1 to stage 5 of grief over Mario in an instant just because I wanted something to play. Indie games, or independent games, are games that are typically made by smaller development teams and studios, or straight up a solo developer. While not given the same budget as large AAA games, indie titles are still some of the most quality games I've ever played. Some of my favorite games of all time are indie games. Hollow Knight, Stardew Valley, A Hat in Time, Castle Crashers, Undertale. For Christ's sake, Minecraft was an indie game, and that's gone on to become the best-selling game of all time. Hell, even larger developers have started collaborating with indie devs to work on projects, with one of the more recent examples being Nintendo and Brace Yourself Games working together to make Cadence of Hyrule. One thing I love about indie developed games so much is that you can tell a lot of these games were made out of passion and love. A lot of these developers have been inspired by the games they grew up playing or have a lot of love for, going on to inspire their own projects. It's even come to the point where some indie games have become so popular that they've had an impact on the creation of other indie games. This leads us to Blue Fire. Developed by the Argentina-based Robe Studios and Graffiti Games, Blue Fire is a 3D platforming and combat-oriented game with Metroidvania elements. The game was initially shown off during a Nintendo Indie World Showcase in March of 2020. The game was planned to launch in summer of that year, but was delayed to Q1 of 2021, most likely due to the boogeyman keeping everyone locked inside. In January of 2021, the game received the new release date of February 4th and a trailer to coincide with the announcement. The game would be a timed exclusive on Nintendo Switch, later coming to Steam, PS4, and Xbox One. I'd originally heard about the game through a stream by the lovely gentleman known as Failboat. It was through his stream that I also learned about there being a plush of the game's main character, Umbra. The plush has since sold out, and I have been filled with a deep regret for not buying one since. First Mario, now this? Watching Mr. Daniel Boat play through the first couple hours of the game, I was immediately hooked, and I knew it was something I needed to play. The game looked like it combined elements from 3D platformers of the early 2000s, as well as taking elements from action-adventure games like The Legend of Zelda and Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight. You could say I tried it out. Very lengthily tried it out. Blue Fire is essentially took the 3 types of games that I just mentioned and smushed them all together into a video game sandwich.
That's Amore.
You know what? No. Better analogy. It's like if A Hat in Time and Hollow Knight were married, and one night when Hollow Knight was out visiting their local 7-Eleven for scratch-offs, The Legend of Zelda showed up and the two got busy. Once Hollow Knight got back, they said "fuck you" and dressed up the baby's room the way that they wanted because they weren't gonna let The Legend of Zelda ruin their marriage! I'm realizing now that maybe the sandwich analogy was better. Anyways, Blue Fire takes place in the Kingdom of Penumbra, somewhere that was supposed to be a final safe haven in the world against the darkness that had been corrupting the land. The game opens with the main character, Umbra, in what seems to be a stasis chamber of sorts. You break out of it and are dropped into a room riddled with corpses that all look very similar to Umbra. Man, I hate when that happens. Upon closer inspection, we see that Umbra has some bomb-ass hair. That stasis chamber must have been filled with hair gel or something, because no matter how products is gonna make my hair look that styling. Jokes aside, having the game open up in an area like this sets in the idea right off the bat that this game is gonna have a slightly darker tone to it. The Fire Keep, the starting area of the game, is extremely damaged, overrun with a dark,
icky paint like goop,
and is almost completely deserted. The game wants to let the player know that while the game takes some inspiration from 3D platformers like Mario, it ain't gonna be as easy as your average day out with the Italian plumber. The game's platforming can get tough at points. Exploring the Fire Keep for a bit, you'll eventually run into what's called a void. In the game's story, these voids were ethereal training grounds created by a group called the Fire Guard in order to train their kind to fight the darkness that we now see corrupting the land of Penumbra. In gameplay, these voids are the equivalent to the platforming purgatories we see in Mario Sunshine and the time rifts from A Hat in Time. These voids are platforming challenges that test the player's skill with Umbra's different movement options and platforming abilities, with the voids getting progressively harder and requiring more moves to complete as the game goes on. And when I say harder, I mean harder. Some of these later voids can be tough as nails and require some precision platforming. They're for the most part optional though, so if there's one void you just can't seem to complete, you're not forced to do it in order to progress through the game. Completing these voids though rewards the player with an extra heart, so there's a pretty good incentive to try and attempt these voids. There are also 30 void souls spread throughout the void's platforming obstacle course. Collecting these are also optional, but they have some pretty nice benefits for doing so, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Even if there weren't any rewards for completing these voids 100%, I'd probably still do it anyways, because the movement in this game is just so fun. Running, jumping, wall running, dashing, it's all so satisfying to do. The movement is just pure fun, and using different moves and abilities feels really good to do. Even when it comes to harder platforming challenges, it's the satisfying, enjoyable platforming that makes me want to keep trying at it until I can beat it. In a game that focuses so heavily on platforming, having such a purely fun and diverse set of movement options that feels really good to use is exactly what you want, and the developers at Roby Studios nailed it. Like, imagine if walking was this fun.
Whoa!
Despite how fun the movement is though, it isn't perfect. There are some problems in the game not entirely related to the movement itself that can ruin the experience at times, which I'll get into later. Blue Fire's gameplay also has a heavy focus on combat compared to some of the platformers it was inspired by. Umbra's main method of attack is a sword slash from one of his two swords. When used alone, it's a pretty simple attack, but when combined with some of his other moves like the jump or dash, combat becomes a little more involved and a little less mindless. Defeating enemies rewards you with shadow fragments, which can be traded in at these statues in order to increase your mana meter. This in turn allows you to use more moves that take up mana, namely your guard move and your fireball attack. Your guard is obviously there to help protect you from taking damage and acting as a block, while the fireball acts as your ranged attack in the game.
But Drewdan, what if you took damage during one of these fights? Do you got a band-aid or an Advil or something that you can use to heal yourself?
Why yes, I'm so glad you asked Disembodied Voice, because if you bring the attention of your vision spheres to the bottom left of the screen, you'll see a small icon. This icon is your baby blue Inferno. Or Blue Fire, depends on who you ask.
Wait a second, that's the name of the video game!
Yeah, that's right. That logo ain't there just to look logo-y. It's there because it's actually important to the game itself. Who would have guessed? Your Blue Fire helps in keeping you from keeling over in the middle of a fight, healing you, and filling up your mana meter as well. If you're fighting some corrupted knights and start taking too much damage, just pop one of these bad boys and it'll bring you back into the fight. Or maybe you just took one because you kept falling into lava too much. I don't know, man, I ain't gonna judge. You might be wondering though, how does beating up crotchety old men that look like they should be roaming the halls of Hogwarts have to do with anything? Well, 1, who gave you the right to ask such oddly specific questions? And 2, I'm getting to that. The purpose of stabbing old geezers and sewer rats has to do with the story of the game itself. The game takes place in the land of Serana, a prosperous world created by 6 gods: Nuos, the god of knowledge, Uthos, the god of water, Dina, the god of land, Tolan, the god of wind, Duran, the god of fire, and a final 6th god who was said to have created life itself, including the 5 other gods.
Well, if this land was so great before under the 6 gods, then how did Calamity get and put his goopy everywhere?
It's pretty simple actually, god anarchy. Yeah, so one of the 6 gods, the same one which was said to have created all life, kinda went crazy with power and started slowly corrupting the land with darkness. The 5 other gods attempted to stop them from doing this, but were ultimately too late. How did this affect the land of Serana? Well, to quote the game, centuries of blood and death followed. Fun.
Man, what a beautiful day. Morning gods fighting each other. It's nothing like another amazing day in the land of Serana. Is that dead body?
Eventually, the Kingdom of Penumbra was created as a last holdout of sorts to hide from the shadows consuming the land. The darkness inevitably found its way into Penumbra, however, consuming almost everyone inside, including the Queen. You, as the character of Umbra, are the last hope of stopping the spread of this corruption. I mean, there were also a group of warriors called the Fire Guard who were trained for the sole purpose of fighting back the darkness, but I mean, all of them are dead besides one, so I'm sure you could take a guess at how well that worked out. The last Fire Guard that's still alive is Vaughn, who serves as a guide-type character, showing up at points in the game in order to tell the player about something important related to the story. So essentially, he's an exposition machine, which was honestly a bit disappointing to me. I feel like seeing the last Fire Guard in action could have been something really cool. Maybe even have him jump in to help with one of the boss fights at some point, something like that. As the character is though in-game, he serves his purpose.
What about the other characters that you meet throughout the story though?
I hear you asking. I don't know, it's pretty cool stuff. I don't know if you'd be able to handle it knowing.
For the love of virginity, please tell me.
Alright, if you say so. Blue Fire's world is full of lovable and killable characters. Major or minor, the characters you meet throughout the game all have a certain charm to them. The Steamhouse workers, the residents of Stoneheart City, these cute little shadowy gremlin boys.
Boy, I'm gonna bite your legs off and sell them on the black market, you cheeky c***.
Whether it's more major characters like Vaughn, the Spirit Hunter, or Elevators! Or Elevators! As I was saying, whether it's Vaughn, the Spirit Hunter, or Elevators! For the love of Aquamarine Blaze, shut the hell up, Orip! Whether it's Vaughn, the Spirit Hunter, or Orip, they all stand out in their own way. The Spirit Hunter in specific is especially important in the game, being able to obtain useful items from them. These useful items in question? He's a Spirit Hunter. He hunts spirits. Like Egon from 1984's classic hit movie Ghostbusters and less classic sequel, but still pretty classic sequel, Ghostbusters 2, not to mention the animated series, The Real Ghostbusters. Spirits are to this game what charms are to Hollow Knight, and if you don't know what I'm talking about because you've never played Hollow Knight, then what the f*** are you doing here? Joking aside, equipping these spirits to your character allow you to use new moves and unlock new abilities. Stuff like increasing your jump altitude, having no fall damage, increasing your sword damage in the air, and even giving yourself a triple jump. Each spirit you use will take up a slot, so you can only use so many of them at a time, starting out with 3 at the beginning of the game. Giving 30 of the Void Souls that I mentioned earlier to the Spirit Hunter will allow you to upgrade to more of these slots though, and thus can use more spirit abilities. But what if I told you that you could get these abilities from something that didn't resemble a middle-aged man with a supercharged vacuum cleaner? Well, my friend, then may I point you in the direction of the game's explorable Metroidvania world? Yeah, you see this game? You can do stuff in it, bet you wouldn't have guessed, huh? No f***ing way. Like I've mentioned God knows how many times at this point, Blue Fire takes inspiration from not only 3D platformers from the 6th generation of game consoles, but from The Legend of Zelda and Metroidvanias as well. These inspirations obviously had a big impact on how the game and world were designed. The game world has a decent amount of diverging paths through it, leading to different items and ability upgrades. Some of these paths you can't even go through until you unlock an ability later in the game, with new abilities unlocking new paths. It's like,
whoa, there's this weird sewer goop in my way, how do I even get across?
You go and run on the walls! There's also a fair amount of other things to collect while exploring Penumbra on top of the spirits and new abilities. You can find different ores and random junk objects, which can be sold at different shopkeepers and NPCs. The main thing you'll be trying to find though are the emote statues, new swords, and new tunics. The swords are obviously your main method of attack in the game, so finding a new pair is always a pleasant surprise. The tunics on the other hand are all cosmetic, although there are some pretty cool looking ones like the Steamworker tunic and the Infinity Robe with this cool space pattern. As for the emote statues, going up to one, you have the option to pay some of ore, not this ore, but this ore, in order to learn a new emote. Different emotes can be used to activate an emote panel with the respective move labeled on it, and doing so will cause a chest to appear. Inside these chests are usually just new swords and new tunics. Also, somewhat unrelated, but it's pretty apparent that this game took some inspiration from a Hat in Time because there is literally a Hat Kid Smug emote in the game, and I love it! Those spirit abilities you can buy from the Spirit Hunter can also be found strewn throughout the world, usually by completing a platforming or combat challenge or by doing a side quest. More important abilities though are unlocked by going through more traditional Zelda-like dungeons. Early on in the game, you're sent to the first dungeon to save the god Nuos from being corrupted by the darkness. From there, you're sent to do the same thing in another Zelda-like dungeon, this time to save the god Uthas. At this point, I was expecting the game to continue with this in a similar style to a lot of the Zelda games, going through 3 more of these dungeons and saving the gods within that were in danger, all ending in a battle with the final god that had caused the corruption in the first place. However, that's when everyone's favorite phrase came into play.
Subversion of expectations.
Or the devs were just like, yeah, we have some new ideas that seem pretty cool and like they might fit in with our game, so I mean, well, yeah, we might as well try them out. A while back though, I watched through a short documentary? Is that how you describe it? Where the developers of Blue Fire talked about the making of the game. Partway through this, the video game's director, Gabriel Rosa, talks about how playtesters for an earlier build of the game said that it reminded them of other games like Dark Souls and Hollow Knight. This got the team curious, and so they ended up checking these games and several others out. As they continued to work on the second half of development, they ended up taking a lot of inspiration from the games that they'd found along the way. Applying that to the game itself, that actually makes a lot of sense. A more Zelda-esque approach is taken for the first half or so of the game. Once you finish that second dungeon though, the game opens up into a more Metroidvania style, and if I'm being completely honest, after playing through the game, I can definitely say that I like the Metroidvania stuff a lot more. While I still enjoyed some of the more Zelda-inspired stuff, I really think this game's strong suit is when it gives the player more options to openly explore. As for how the slight change in the world design affects the story of the game, I'm a bit mixed. At this point in the game, your new objective is defeating the 3 Shadow Lords. Doing so will allow you to access the final boss of the game, the Queen of Penumbra, who has now been corrupted by the spreading darkness. With how our goal before this was saving 2 of the gods before they were corrupted, I assume that these 3 Shadow Lords were the other 3 gods who we were too late to save. After checking back on the names of the Shadow Lords and the remaining 3 gods though, they aren't the same. This honestly just kinda confuses me, like, were 3 other dungeons planned for the other gods but they were cut from the game? Or were they just killed or corrupted so there's no point in exploring what happened to them? If that's the case, then why not just make the Shadow Lords the gods after they had been corrupted? You wouldn't even have to change that much about the game itself. You already have a Fire Lord to go with the god Duron, so you literally wouldn't have to change anything there. The Ice Shadow Lord uses a wind-based attack or 2, so you already have a small basis for the god Talon. The only one that would take some more major changes in order to make work would be Lord Samael, who you would have to somehow change to an Earth/Rock related boss fight. Now, by mentioning all of this, I'm in no way saying,
I, video gaming expert extraordinaire, know more about designing video games than you simpletons over at, what do you even call yourselves, Roby Studios? Ha! I laugh at you. I know more about designing video games than the likes of you because I'm a gaming expert, you hear me? I am a gamer. I'm a video game. I'm an epic gamer!
I have no idea how to make a game or what it even takes to try and make one, so I'm not gonna sit here and act like I do. I'm not even saying that the game is bad or anything because of this, just a simple missed opportunity, that's all. Alright, that small tangent aside, I actually think that what you have to do in order to fight the Shadow Lords is pretty fun. Like I said before, the game becomes more Metroidvania-esque at this point. First thing to mention is that you can fight these 3 in pretty much whatever order you want. The first one I went for, Lord Sirion, is fought in a dungeon similar to the first 2, this time being a lot less linear, or at least it felt like it. The second Shadow Lord I fought was Lady Bira, who you can gain access to by going to these 3 orbs strewn throughout the game's world. Activating an orb causes a bunch of soul fragments to be spread throughout the area. Collecting all these soul fragments quote-unquote completes the orb, for lack of a better word. Doing this for all 3 orbs allows access to the area where the boss lies. The last Shadow Lord, Samal, is accessed by activating 4 switches. While these switches are all within the same room, the only way to access each switch is through a one-way entrance, with each entrance being in a different part of Penumbra. Adding this bit of variety in a more open and exploration-based portion of the game is nice, and was overall really fun to do. Now with the 3 Shadow Lords defeated, you have access to the final boss of the game, the Queen of Penumbra. And can I just say, damn, this boss is fun! I mean, like, it's tough as hell, but it's super fun! The boss tests your skill and everything you've learned throughout the game up to this point. The boss is super fast-paced, and you have to be on your toes almost the whole time, especially during the second phase of the fight when the laser grid floor comes out. At that point, it becomes nearly impossible to heal, and you really need to be careful about your movements, all the while simultaneously requiring split-second decision-making. I really can't say anything else other than that this boss fight kicks ass and is a great way to end off the game. The only downside to the end of the game for me was that I don't really understand what happened. Like, you kill the queen, she goes, you're shown some of the text in the language of the game's world, a huge burst of light goes through and around the kingdom, and then everything's dark. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing something here, or they're setting something up for the sequel. To my knowledge, the 6th god is still alive, so maybe the threat isn't completely gone. I don't know, man. With that out of the way, there's still one last thing I need to talk about the game that I've been holding off for a while now. And I'd have to say it's the worst aspect of the game. That being the glitches. Holy shit, the glitches, dude. I'd be lying if I said I didn't like this game. Hell, I love this game, and I had an awesome time playing it. But the one constant that would ruin my time with it were glitches. Now, the game isn't cyberpunk levels of glitchy. I think anyone can take their crown from them. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't noticeable. The first one that I'll mention is the inconsistency with the triple jump, and even the double dash at times. I'd go to do my 3rd jump or dash a 2nd time, and the game just wouldn't.
Well, Brandon, you're probably just bad at the game and must have been doing something wrong.
That one dude in the back is saying.
He's talking about me!
Okay, tell me what I could be doing wrong in getting the triple jump to work. It's a triple jump. You jump 3 times. Whether this next thing is a glitch or not, I also noticed that lock-on enemy targeting would sometimes untarget an enemy even though I hadn't touched anything and I didn't move that far from the enemy. It was really infrequent, but I thought it was something worth bringing up regardless. This next one, however, really rustles my jimmies. This game is super fun. Yeah, great transition, I know. So much so that I decided I was going to go for 100% in the game. That meant collecting all of the swords, all of the outfits, doing all of the side quests, getting all of the spirits, and completing all of the voids. All of the voids. and completing all of the voids. I had to complete all of the voids. Okay, so I did everything in this game, dude. And I mean like everything. For newness' sake, when I finished the last void that wasn't marked off on my list, it literally gave me the reward for finishing all of the voids. But for some reason, it still marked 2 of my voids as incomplete with 0 out of 30 void souls for each. This meant that I didn't have enough void souls to get all the spirits, meaning my save file was stuck on the painful number of 98.49% forever, all because my game decided it didn't want to work. Hey everyone, my name is Brendan from the not so distant future. I hope your day's been going good, and I've got some great news. The number's not at 98.49% anymore. It's at 98.5. You know the worst part about it? I still wanted to 100% the game and see if there's anything that you got for it. So I had the great idea of trying to 100% the game again. Boy, am I cool. Does that give me enough points on my virgin card, ladies? Bingo! For about 60% of my next playthrough, everything was going fine. And then the exact same glitch happened again, 0 to 30 void souls collected despite the fact that I did, meaning that 100% on the save file was now impossible. This next thing might sound weird, but I don't know whether this whole thing is showing that the game is really good or just annoying because of the glitches. Both, I guess? Despite how annoying it was having my save file glitch out, it wasn't all that bad. I had a blast playing through the game the first time, so I was kind of looking forward to experiencing the game again. But then when that glitch happened for a second time, I crossed the line and I said, F this. I've picked up the game a few times since then, attempting a few no-death runs and even starting up a third playthrough, this time just for fun since I wasn't ready to refight the beast that was 100% completion. This last big one that I want to mention is that I noticed during the second half of the game, specifically after you unlock fast travel, there will sometimes be problems going into loading zones. Whether it's through fast travel or just going through a door, the game will fail to load and you'll be booted out of the game back to your console's home screen. Or at least on the Switch version, which is the one that I played. I can't really say much on this other than, man, it just got so old so fast and ruined the fun of the game when it happened and kind of demotivated me from playing at times. I'm not sure if any of these glitches have been patched out yet, and I'm not really mentally prepared to test it, especially the void glitch. So as far as I know, they're still in the game. Don't let me ranting about these bugs steer you away from the game completely though, as there's still a lot of fun to be had in it. When you peel away that layer of glitches and annoying bugs that come up every once in a while, you have a really solid 3D platformer that harkens back to the 3D platformers of the 6th generation. Not only this, but the game is also able to add in elements from different types of games, mixing them together to make the really fun, creative, and unique experience that is Blue Fire. I know I just got done ragging on the game because of glitches not too long ago, and that might have turned some people off from picking up the game, which is completely valid, but this game is really something special, and I'd love it if more people got to try it out. And hey, there's even a demo available, so if any of what I've been talking about has seemed interesting to you, go ahead and give it a try. I really want to see this game succeed. There's a lot in this game that I feel could be improved or expanded upon in a sequel, and I'd love to actually see it happen someday. There are a lot of really cool and fun ideas here, and I'd hate to see all of this potential for a second game go to waste, since I loved the first one so much, even despite its faults. Blue Fire is a beautiful mix of 3D platforming, action-adventure, and Metroidvania gameplay, and was a super fun and unique experience that I'd love to see expanded upon if Roby Studios ever decides to. Well, with all that out of the way, there's still one thing I'm wondering. If this thing can blend 3 games together and pop out another game, what else can it do?